Welcome to Kinky Knots Cafe's Proactive is the Way. Proactive is the Way is a podcast brought to you by two sisters who dove into the health and wellness industry, one planned and the other by fate. We have joined forces to bring to you authentic conversations about our personal experiences as it relates to managing our health, working within the industry, and taking our combined knowledge to share with you some pearls of wisdom that you can take with you to live the best version of you. Over the next year, we will host 2 episodes a month. Each month, we will focus on a topic that is designed to increase an awareness of tools and resources to enhance an aspect of your mind, body, and spirit. A few weeks ago, we kicked off that good life. Tiffany and I discussed how we cultivate purpose and define meaning within life. It was interesting that while looking back on our life, we both shared that having children, or rather the efforts that we put into raising children, turned out to be the most memorable and rewarding experience within our life. We also discussed that no matter how challenging life becomes, it is in our best interest and that of the world's to continue the course because what we have found is that we all serve as a key to unlock the secrets of the universe. And it is by enduring our plight in life that we will be able to serve the greater good that will put us on a path of continuous development and exponential growth. Hopefully, you found our past discussions helpful in preparing you for today. Today, I will be reviewing a couple of highlights from a book we read that prompted our discussions. Flow, The Secret to Happiness by Muheli Csikszentmihalyi. So before I begin, I will share a disclaimer provided by the author. Please note that this disclaimer is actually applicable to all self help books in general. Muheli shared, however well intentioned, books cannot give recipes for how to be happy because optimal experience depends on the ability to control what happens in consciousness moment by moment. Each person has to achieve it on the basis of his own individual efforts and creativity. What a book can do, however, and what this one will try to accomplish, is to present examples of how life can be made more enjoyable, ordered in the framework of a theory, for readers to reflect upon and from which they may then draw their own conclusions. I've shared this before, folks. We truly need to learn how to be better critical thinkers. It's so imperative that we learn to do our own research, experience life in our own way, and do so fully for ourselves. All right, so let's begin with our learning checklist. So, within this presentation, we'll go through our consciousness. We'll talk a little bit about our consciousness and the impact that it has on our flow states. But of course, with consciousness, we have to truly understand how it works. What are the limits of it? How can it be controlled? Because the ultimate goal in all of this is to truly find meaning within our life. So we'll kick things off with a quote. And this quote I actually pulled from the book. I'm just going to read it here. It's from or by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Ralph stated, "We are always getting to live, but never living." I thought this quote was perfect to kick off really what we are about to learn and experience today. Hopefully, you'll have a full understanding about what this quote means. All right, so flow. We'll define flow. Flow is the state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience itself is so enjoyable that people will do it even at great cost for the sheer sake of doing it. Consciousness. We'll define consciousness. It's an awareness by the mind of itself and the world by leveraging our faculties, also known as our senses, to make sense of our surroundings and manipulate outcomes. Oftentimes, our environment hinders our abilities to find and live in a flow state. And you might be asking yourself, why did she go through this process right now to define flow and then also to define consciousness? What we found is that in order to create or have that optimal experience, we truly have to dive deep and understand consciousness. And as I shared earlier, it's imperative that we understand how it works. What are its limits and how can we control it to create optimal experiences? So let's start by talking a little bit about the human evolution. Over the course of human evolution, we have always tried to help people find meaning and protect ourselves. We have done this through the creation of myths and from a religious perspective through revelations, holy texts, and laws. Of course, as time went on, we leveraged these faculties to manipulate outcomes and bring about control. The author shared that as a result of this, you will find that civilization has been socialized and, as such, built on the repression of individual desires. It's important to know, as the author shares, that the essence of socialization it is to make people dependent on social controls, to have them respond predictably to rewards and punishments. And the most effective form of socialization is achieved when people identify so thoroughly with the social order that they no longer can imagine themselves breaking any of its rules. And guess what, folks? When they, and I'm going to put that in quotations, when they cannot rely on pain, social systems will use pleasure as the inducement to accept norms. The good life promised as a reward for a lifetime of work and adherence to laws is built on the cravings contained in our genetic programs. Practically every desire that has become part of human nature, from sexuality to aggression, from a longing for security to a receptivity to change, has been exploited as a source of social control by politicians, churches, corporations, and advertisers. The reality is that control over consciousness, it cannot be institutionalized. In the East, techniques for achieving control over consciousness proliferated and achieved levels of enormous sophistication. And for those who have been following me, you probably notice I talk a lot about the East, and there's a reason for that. And this is part of the reason. Although quite different from one another in many respects, the yogi disciplines that we find in India, the Taoist approach to life that was developed in China, and the Zen varieties of Buddhism all seek to free consciousness from the deterministic influences of outside forces. These techniques helps us learn how to achieve control, to overcome the anxieties and depressions of contemporary life. Individuals must become independent of the social environment to the degree that they no longer respond exclusively in terms of its rewards and punishments. To achieve such autonomy, a person has to learn to provide rewards to themselves. One has to develop the ability to find enjoyment and purpose regardless of external circumstances. So the author asks the question, how do we achieve mastery over one's life? What does the present state of knowledge say about it? How can it help a person learn to rid himself or herself of anxieties and fears, and thus become free of the controls of society, whose rewards we actually now have a choice? Rewards that we can take or leave. This can be done all through understanding our consciousness, how it works, its limitations, and how it is controlled. So, let's talk a little bit about our consciousness, and we'll dive into how it works. Without consciousness, we would still know what is going on, but we would have to react to it in a reflexive, instinctive way. With consciousness, we can deliberately weigh what the senses tell us and respond accordingly. And because we are creators, we can also invent information that never existed before. Thus, now, while consciousness is a mirror that reflects what our senses tell us about what happens both outside our bodies and within the nervous system, it reflects those changes selectively, actively shaping events, imposing on them a reality of its own. The reflection consciousness provides is what we call our life. The sum of all we have heard, seen, felt, hoped, and suffered from birth to death. And although we believe that there are things outside consciousness, we have direct evidence only of those that find a place in it. The author shares the events that constitute consciousness, the things that we see, feel, think, and desire, are information that we can manipulate and use. Thus, we might think of consciousness as intentionally ordered information. So now that we have an understanding of how it works, let's talk a little bit about its limits. The reality is that an individual can experience only so much. Therefore, the information we allow into consciousness becomes extremely important. It is, in fact, what determines the content and the quality of life. Unfortunately, our nervous system, has finite limits on how much information it can process at any given time. There are just so many events that can appear in consciousness and be recognized and handled appropriately before they begin to crowd each other out. So let's talk a little bit about, well, how do we control it? How do we control it to have that optimal experience, to find a flow state in all that we do? The mark of a person who is in control of consciousness is a person who has the ability to focus attention at will, to be oblivious to distractions, to concentrate for as long as it takes to achieve a goal and not longer. And the person who can do this usually enjoys the normal course of everyday life. And the author shares that this attention that he references, he also calls it psychic energy. He shares that attention is like energy in that without it, no work can be done. And in doing work, it is dissipated. We create ourselves by how we invest this energy. Memories, thoughts, and feelings are all shaped by how we use it. And it is an energy under our control to do with as we please. Hence, you will find when we are talking about how to effectively control consciousness, attention is our most important tool. But of course, where there is attention, there's always a distraction. There's always disorder that can come about in our consciousness. And the author shares that this is called our psychic entropy. One of the main forces that affects consciousness adversely is psychic disorder. That is, information that conflicts with existing intentions or distracts us from carrying them out. We give this condition many names, and depending on how we experience it, it can come in the form of pain, fear, rage, anxiety, or jealousy. And all these varieties of disorder force attention to be diverted to undesirable objects, leaving us no longer free to use it according to our preferences. Psychic energy becomes cumbersome and ineffective. He shares, but a new piece of information, if we were to acquire a new piece of information, we will find that it will either create disorder in consciousness by getting us all worked up to face the threat, or it will reinforce our goals, thereby freeing up psychic energy. And when our attention can be freely invested to achieve our goals, because there is no disorder to straighten out, there's no threat for the self to defend against what he calls this state, the flow experience. When the information that keeps coming into awareness is congruent with goals, psychic energy flows effortlessly. There is no need to worry, no reason to question one's adequacy. But whenever one does stop to think about oneself, the evidence is encouraging. You will know that you are doing all right. And the positive feedback will strengthen you, and more attention will be freed up to deal with the outer and the inner environment. Now, the author, he goes, as I mentioned, we're just providing a couple of the highlights here, but he goes into depth even more. I am only touching the surface of this book. He talks about how we can better understand consciousness to create optimal experiences in a number of ways, and how we find enjoyment. He shares we can find what flow looks like, or better understand what flow looks like in our culture, in our activities, how we deal with people on a day to day. What are ways that we can use flow to go higher, become faster, or grow stronger? He talks about how we can even experience flow within our sexual relations, or control our experience through the use of yoga, martial arts, or meditation. He even dives deep into work, eating, music. The one I really loved was art. He even discusses tragedy, destructive patterns, and leveraging flow to navigate more effectively and make better decisions to help us overcome. So, how do we use all of this knowledge to find meaning in life? When a person is able to organize his or her consciousness so as to experience flow as often as possible, the quality of life is inevitably going to improve. In flow, we are in control of our psychic energy, and everything we do adds order to consciousness. Whatever it is, wherever it comes from, a unified purpose is what gives meaning to life. Someone who is in harmony no matter what he does, no matter what is happening to him or her, knows that their psychic energy is not being wasted on doubt, regret, guilt, and fear, but is always usually employed. Inner congruence ultimately leads to that inner strength and serenity we admire in people who seem to have come to terms with themselves. So I'll close with this. Don't just do life, experience it. All right, join us as we launch our next series. Let your life speak. Have you ever found yourself attempting to live or even living the life of others? You get so caught up searching for the next big thing that you lose sight of who you truly are. Well, we will learn all about one man's experience in finding himself as we review Parker Palmer's book, Let Your Life Speak, listening to the voice of your vocation. We look forward to you joining us. And in preparation for our discussions, we have included in the description where you can pick up a copy of the book. To access all replays or learn more about Kinky Knots Cafe's Proactive is the Way, please visit www.kinkyknotscafe.com. Proactive is the way, my friends. Take good care.